Okay. So there was a random pop-up that happened right when I put this up here. Apparently, I can put people in timeout if they chat or they say something inappropriate or if they're talking too much or whatever. I really don't think that's going to happen here. But so I've been getting a lot of different comments on different things lately, and I figured maybe I could like bring up some of those things or maybe tell you guys where I'm at with a couple of different things. So, for starters, 2 videos a week is what's happening now. As long as I can keep up with that, that's what I'm going to keep doing. So basically, I'm going to be uploading the Wednesday videos first, and then I'm probably going to plan it out like a couple of weeks in advance. And then if I'm like a month ahead, any other videos that I make, I'm going to put them on Thursdays. So that's update-ish number 1. Update number 2, YouTube finally got around to, if you saw my community post, you would have seen this, but YouTube finally got around to making it easier for channel members to get videos early, because now whenever I upload something, I can actually put it as early access for members, which made it way easier than uploading a second video that I had to edit a little bit of and therefore make it slightly different for the YouTube system and then make that into a member only video. So if you are on my Patreon, then you can get the audio early. If you are a channel member, you can get the audio and video version early. And then on top of that, let me see. So I have like at least 2 videos a week going through January, which is going to be fabulous, and I really want to keep up with that. I'm trying to figure out how exactly to go about this whole setup with this background right here. Let me know if you guys like it, because what I want to do is probably make the videos. If I get back into making regular videos, I'm probably going to be doing this background right here, because I just love that tapestry, dude. That tapestry is like, esoteric, fabulous, yada, yada, yada. So, let me know if you guys have any questions or anything that might be like burning in your minds, but I'm probably just going to keep going about the different updates and things like that. So I made a short about doing magic on a new moon and how that's kind of bad. And I got some people that commented, uh, against that, saying that it's really good for like dark workings and things of that sort. And that might be according to your tradition, and that might work well. But I've gone with the 2 different traditions that I follow, which would be the Qero tradition from South America and the Simon Necronomicon tradition. And both of them say that don't do anything on a new moon. So I go along with what those specific traditions say. Now, does that apply to everybody? No, but it's my recommendation just from my own background and such. And so I don't, I'm trying to think of any other kinds of things. Oh, so I did have one comment, which I can kind of bring up some stuff that would be early as far as content goes, but you guys are here, so why don't I spill a little bit of the tea, let's say. So I had a comment on one of my videos about how the Simon Necronomicon would be kind of like, how do I go about this? I'm trying to remember how I recorded the video this morning. But basically, if you think about any type of grimoire that we have, or any type of magical book that's attributed to somebody that the name's weird, right? You have, like the Kabbalion, which is supposed to be like Hermes Trismegistus, I think, or maybe that's the Green Tablet, or both. And was he a real guy? We're not entirely sure, right? But okay, then we have the Bible, right? You have and even the apocryphal books. You have the Gospel of Thomas. I think there's like 2 different Gospels of Thomas. One of them is named a little bit differently. Then you have, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Did Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John and Thomas actually write those? No. Those guys were dead, right? Those were written in like the 2nd century, which is like about 200 or 170 years after Jesus kicked the bucket / went up to the sky, but they attached the names to those manuscripts for notoriety and whatnot. And the same could hypothetically be said for the Simon Necronomicon, because the word Necronomicon is all about like dark forces and yada, 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 vis-a-vis H.P. Lovecraft. And did the manuscript that they found in the bookstore, as the story goes, actually have the name Necronomicon on it? It could have, because that author that made it could have wanted to attribute it to something that was, mysterious, dark, and popular, and thus get people motivated to start translating it, right? So, I mean, even the Simon, the editor of the Simon Necronomicon, in the intro, he talks about Abdul El-Hazred and whatnot, and of course, that is the whole story with the H.P. Lovecraft version of the Simon Necronomicon and such. Was the Simon Necronomicon authored by Abdul El-Hazred? No, because he is a fictional person, right? Created by H.P. Lovecraft. But if you want to get something to have notoriety and give it a little bit of oomph, if somebody just called this like ancient Sumerian magic or ancient Mesopotamian magic, what do you think the amount of people would be that would pick that book up? Not necessarily that many, right? But if you give it an interesting name that attracts people to it, then they're more likely to pick it up. And then when you start digging around in the system, you're like, hey, this shit is legit, right? So we're talking, I mean, the Simon Necronomicon has the Enuma Elish in it. It has the Magan text, which has on the Descent of Ishtar. It has the Maklu tablets in there, right? So does it have actual source material from Mesopotamia? Yeah, you can actually draw a lot of its material to a book that was like the Magic of Sumeria, and I'm translating that title from French. Is Le Magie de Syrienne, something like that. I haven't taken French since I was in high school, and if I remember that title right, so that could have been the source material for it. And then they built sigils around it, around the 50 names of Marduk. If you want a different interpretation and a more extensive one that is more canonically based with the Enuma Elish, I do have my Powers of Marduk book that I made, where I actually made the sigils based on the Jupiter planetary square. And it's actually got a modified prayer in there for invoking the 50 names of Marduk. I've wanted to do that one for a while, and that was the last book that I put out, and it gives you a different way of working with the Simon Necronomicon's entities vis-a-vis the 50 names of Marduk. So I still believe, personally, they use Lovecraft to get some of that money. Either way, it's a cornerstone for the Mesopotamia in the modern age. Yeah, I would definitely agree with you on that one, Qeros. I really think that, it was more of a way of having it get notoriety and vis-a-vis money grab, that kind of stuff, getting it to have a little bit more oomph and a little bit more exposure. And also, if you want to go deeper with the esotericism of it, I guess you could say, the spirit of the book, it protects the book from people that would kind of like do it harm or misuse it or aren't worthy of it, that kind of stuff, right? So if you stick this title on there where a bunch of people are going to be like, nah, it's crap, nah, it's fake, yada, 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 they never look into it, well, then maybe they're not that kind of person that should or could or would go very far with working with the book, right? So anybody that just like gives it a once over and judges the book by its cover, then that kind of, it weeds out the people that aren't going to benefit from it. Which is why the book sat on my shelf for a good 2.5 years before I actually picked it up. And then I started taking it more seriously. And then, as they say, the rest is history. And here I am, years later, after starting this channel back in 2015. So, and that's why I dug through the entire system. I was even thinking the other day where if I dig deep enough into the spirits of the Nurgle and the black magic of primary forces, I'm going to have to modify Lamadou Dingir to include those, because I like having everything in one volume, in one book. It's always been my dream to have this massive spell book of different things to do. And where I have one source for everything. I think that is kind of a fabulous freaking idea. So, I keep seeing people pop in and out, but you guys got any questions for me while I'm here? Anything that you might have made a comment on that I haven't made a video on yet, or anything that might be on your mind with different things? Because I could keep rambling, but if you guys pop a question up, then I could definitely answer that. one thing that was brought up as far as a comment was wondering more about spiritual bypass. So I could talk about that for a little bit. So, as far as like what I've understood and what I've researched and things with spiritual bypass, it's when you use spirituality as a way of not actually tackling your problems. You know, um, we have an acquaintance we used to be friends with that we don't associate with anymore, who would always be going to these different events and getting different healings and different things like that. And, because she had a bunch of different issues. And, you know, it's like running on a treadmill. You're moving, but you're not getting anywhere. You're not going from point A to point B. You're starting at point A. Or people that use their level of spirituality and they've had their kundalini awakened and they're a yoga master and they go to an ashram whenever they feel crappy. If you ever watched You on Netflix, hysterical. Um, and they use all these different spiritual practices to not actually do the work on what they need to do work on. I'm talking shadow work. I'm talking journaling. I'm talking doing spells to benefit yourself, benefit your life, make your life better, get rid of negativity, get rid of any addictions or hangups or different things like that. Those kinds of things. That's like the real work. That's what I've come to understand is the great work. So spiritual bypass, in a way, is like avoiding the great work of what are you here to do? What do you need to fix? You got to, stop blaming other people for your problems and stop saying, "Oh, I'm good, I'm fine." Anybody that tells you they're fine and they don't have any problems and they don't have anything to heal is absolutely full of garbage, you know? So, that's one of the things with spiritual bypass, and I actually did share an article about it a while back on my Patreon because I did some research on it. Because anytime I do research and I find something good that I'm reading, I throw it up there, and so you want to follow along with that research track that I do, that's up there. Um, so as I've been working with or I haven't been working with it, but I've been pondering over it and messing around with it. The black magic of primary forces, as we're switching tack here. It has a very similar-esque Necronomicon formula as far as the prayers go and stuff, and the use of paper sigils. It's got one sigil that you make, which symbolizes all of the primary forces, and you stick that in your altar, and it's like that's one tool that you bring out for everything. And then you pick one of the primary force sigils and you make it for that specific working and you place it on top of the one that represents them all. And you're actually sitting in a circle that's surrounded by, you have 3 candles. There's an east candle, a west candle, and a south candle. And then you're actually supposed to use a wool skein, they say. So I guess you could use a circle-shaped wool rug, and that's what you're sitting on. So that's your temple space. And then your circle is actually a purple rope that you put around it, a purple cord, and you energetically cast a circle on that, and you go in there and you follow the exact formula / prayers to make the black magic of primary forces work. One of the interesting things about it is once you are done, it says leave your dwelling for an hour. So I'm wondering, if I do it down here in the basement, should I leave the basement for an hour? Should I leave the house for an hour? Right? I think it's one of those things where, like, do I want to experiment with it? You bet I do. But I'm wondering about, like, first I gotta gather some materials. I gotta find that a circle wool rug. My lady probably knows where it is, but we're definitely really busy, so I gotta figure that out. I gotta get the purple cord. I gotta get the 3 purple candles, and then as far as that one primary sigil that represents them all, I'm probably gonna make it with like a Sharpie on some material thing that I can keep, and then something that's going to last over time. It says that you could like put it on paper and laminate it, but I'm probably not going to do that. I could upload the image and like have it sent over to like CVS Photo and do that kind of thing. That might be the easiest thing to do. But then again, having it on like a piece of tile or something like that would be fabulous. I bet if I brought it up to my gate walking apprentice, if he was interested in that, this guy is so artsy with making like plates and different stuff. You guys should see his work when it comes to making the seals for the gates. Oh man, this guy is such a freaking artist. Um, so T-Man, yeah, you'd probably leave the house with these kinds of things. That's probably what I'm going to end up doing, which means I could do it right before I go to work or something like that. And therefore, I do it, I get in the car, I go to work, I'm out of the house for 8 hours, right? So that might be what I'm going to end up doing with it. I think I actually have that book down here. If you guys haven't picked it up yet, let's see. So that symbol on the front is for all of the primary forces. That's the one that you make permanent on something, whether it's a permanent piece of paper, maybe laminated, what have you, and that's the one that you use, right? And then it's got the other, all of my butchering notes. Sometimes it's hard. Oh yeah, and speaking of which, by the way, it does have a completely different athame that you use for everything. You use this in place of like what you would use like a wand for, One of the things that I'm going to modify, you see how it says Anu right there, right? And then it says Ialu on the top and Anu on the bottom. I would put that in Sumerian writing. I think that would be way better than English, right? And those two sigils, you got Ialu, and let me see if you guys can see that. You got Ialu and Anu's sigil right there. Gives you a little bit more of an explanation on that. You got the 4 different signs. And I know that on my last live stream I did show this page, but as you can see, I'm taking some notes. So I'm digging my way through that. Wish I could just find the little pages that have the different symbols on them. So for example, operation of invisibility. Basically, it's a much more simplistic method for sigil stuff rather than using the 72 Nergak, the 72 Goetic spirits, or the 50 names of Marduk. What we're talking about is just 5 different sigils. And basically, any intention, they say, can boil down into any of those 5 categories. It literally says if you can't figure out which one your desire fits into, take some time and use your brain. So, I mean, it was pretty snarky when it came to saying you could figure it out, right? So this is really, really simplistic, but I'll also tell you, they did a great job with delineating what your altar is supposed to look like, right? Like, that's a really dang good description right there. I really like that. And working your way through prayers, and it's so hard to do this with one hand, I'll tell you that. And then, so you have the primary symbol that's supposed to represent all of them on the top, and then you have your, like, that's an example of a chosen one of the 5 on the bottom, and you can write the name of your beneficiary or victim on it. One of the things that I can tell you, at least from my tradition, the Qero tradition that I follow, and let me know if you guys want me to talk more about that, because I can really go deep on that. But when you're doing something to benefit or the opposite with somebody, arguably use their birth name, because that's the name that's like tied to their spirit. It's the first name that they were given when they came into this material plane, right? So if they changed their name, doesn't matter. If they got married, doesn't matter. You use their like original name. So as much as I don't like my original name, I use that whenever I'm doing particular works, asking for different benefits or healings or what have you. Any of those times that I do like a Kintu prayer. You got to state your name, your location, your gifts, and then what you're asking for example. So, I use my full name, which I'm not a fan of my full first name, for example. So, is that book pretty interesting? Yeah. Is it simplistic in its steps? Yes. Arguably, it's more simplistic in its steps than the Nergak is. As far as figuring out which sigil you're going to use, and then, you just have like the 3 candles, not 2 compared to the 50 names of Marduk, and you don't have to have a black mirror. I mean, with the Nergak, for example, a lot of the different spirits require different things. Some of them have you use a wax doll. I think some of them have you write the sigil on a particular material. Some of them have you use certain like candles and other things like that. And you have the black mirror, of course. So the black magic of primary forces is arguably easier because the formula is the same the whole time. And you just gotta use your brain to figure out which one to use. As the old Egyptian magic goes, names have power. Well, names have power in any tradition. If you think about it, the old story of Lilith, right? Adam's first wife. She refused to, she actually wanted to be on top during nudge, nudge, and Adam refused. And, because she didn't want to be subservient to him, she wanted to be equal. And when he refused, she was like, screw this, I'm out of here. She spoke the name of God and therefore grew wings and then flew off, right? And then God sent angels after her or whatever. So speaking that name gave her power. At the beginning was the word. So words have power. Sounds have power. That's why we use them in our incantations, in magic and stuff. It's much more effective to talk out loud than it is in your head because you're bringing something from the energetic to the physical. You are manifesting something through your words. So even, speaking curses or negativity towards somebody on an energetic level does something to that, if you ask me. I definitely think it does. So yeah, do names have power? Absolutely. I actually just made a video on like magic words and stuff like that. That is available on Patreon and to my channel members. I love touting that kind of stuff because I'm really happy that I've gotten to this point where I'm able to produce so many different things and offer a lot of like different benefits and stuff because it allows me to go like much deeper into my magical practice. And because it's like I'm finding more and more and more things to speak about, more and more things to dive into. I feel like I've gotten like, like that fire in me to do more and dig more has gotten stoked and it's growing, bigger, better, faster, stronger, that kind of stuff, So I've got that cooking. I'm also currently reading the Gospel of Thomas, which is a bunch of like supposed hidden sayings of Jesus. And a lot of them are really, really, really interesting. One of them, and of course I'm going to paraphrase all these because the book is upstairs, but if everything's always upstairs, right? You know, if there's darkness inside and if you have a light inside and you're not shining that light to the outside, then the inside of you is dark. So what does that speak to? That speaks to like if you have any talents or gifts or something you want to do, something that's burning within in you to do, and you do not do it, then inside you really don't have a light, do you? If you don't follow your heart, follow your motivation, follow your dreams, that light inside you is going to die, right? So there's so many of these different sayings that you can extrapolate. And I'm actually going to be digging into using different things. Like I know that there's the possibility of using psalms for magical purposes and even just meditating on different sayings and things like that. That's more of like the great work kind of stuff, figuring out different ways of growing spiritually, because magic isn't just about everything I do at my altar. It's growing inside. It's manifesting different things both inside and out. One of the more interesting things that I could probably show you guys if I can get around to it, or it's based on where I put it. Hang on one second. I gotta dig. So I have a coworker, right? Who her mom was cleaning up her house because she wanted to move. And she had this Bible that my coworker was like, she wanted to give it to Goodwill. And my coworker was like, hey, I have a coworker that's like a spiritual nerd. Maybe I'll give it to him for free. And this thing, look at the size of my hand. Look at the size of my hand over this thing. This is huge, right? I mean, this thing, you could hit somebody with that and it would freaking hurt, you know? This was printed in 1893. And I mean, this was legit printed. This was stamp printed. This was old school printed. And I can't wait to like actually use this because, you ask like the Black Tower, you ask Mind and Magic. The stuff in the actual Bible, in the different books, can be used for magical purposes. So that's one thing I'm actually going to be taking quite the stab at. But this thing is almost a coffee table in itself with how how huge this thing is. I mean, let me switch this back over. When she showed me that thing, and she was like, "You're going to want to hold this with two hands." Yeah, that thing is huge. Yeah. So, I mean, you'd be amazed at how freaking heavy that thing is, right? But I'm going to be digging into using the Psalms for magic, which hypothetically, now that I think about it, you could arguably use them as intentions in spell work. You could use them as invocations for certain qualities of deities. You could use them to invoke different angelic energies / angels, whatever you want to call them. I think that, the same with like the Simon Necronomicon, where you have one of the things that gives it so much power is the amount of people that have used it and the belief. Because if you go into the collective unconscious, we're all pouring energy into things when we think about them, and thus growing that energetic thing bigger and deeper. And the more that we dig into that, and the more that we tap into that, it can get really, really strong, right? Well, how many people have worked with, the KJV? How many people have worked with various Bibles? Lots of people. How many people believe, and you could go into like Tanya Lerman's work about how God is a tulpa, because so many people believe in him and it created that kind of thing. You could even extrapolate that to things like the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, Slenderman, So the fact is that you can effectively use that. So that's one thing that I'm going to be stepping into, and it's kind of funny to kind of almost go full circle with this kind of stuff, because I was raised going to Catholic school and then went over to witchcraft and said everything that with Catholicism and stuff was like garbage and whatever, mainly because of the way that humanity screwed it up. But I'm trying to go back into how that kind of stuff is more like pure, and just picking apart, okay, if this is divinely inspired or whatever, then it is usable. So I'm going to be digging into that, and I'm wondering how many people would be interested in me making videos on that if I was to make videos on that, because I know that, the whole like Christian witch kinds of things, or even just speaking of the Bible jazz, can kind of turn people off, because a lot of people come to magic after regular mainstream religion puts a really bad taste in your mouth. But I think it's something I'm going to be digging into. And it was funny because before I got around to it, I was doing a bunch of research into various different things, and I was doing a bunch of research into an old pastime of mine ever since I was a teenager, which is, exorcisms and stuff like that. And then this Bible basically falls in my lap for free. I mean, technically, they're not worth anything. Um, Bibles that are before a certain year are worth something, but this one you could get for like $15 on eBay, you know? So I think that it ain't worth nothing monetary wise, but I think that certain things come to you when they're supposed to. It's one of those synchronicity of life kinds of deals, is when, on your journey through life, sometimes you can be like, man, I wish I had started this years ago. Like I wish I had started practicing the didgeridoo when I was a teenager, right? But that didn't happen until like 2 or 3 years ago. Things happen when they're supposed to happen, kind of, sort of. Things come into your life that way. Now, you might say, but magic makes us do things or helps us to create things when we want to create them. Yeah, that's true. But when it comes to like certain things that you're learning or certain ways that your path can veer left or right, I think that the universe kind of unfolds those things for you, or does it in a way that like certain doors open when you're ready, if you know what I mean. Hmm. Half of it is going to be immediately useful. The other half will take some time. What do you mean half of it's going to be useful? Like, half of what? Sorry, I'm just moving over here because I realized I left the cabinet thing open and kind of don't want my cats to go in there. I'm not a fan of letting my cats go under my cabinets and my TV. Just trying to move something over a little bit. By the way, I think I mentioned a while back that I was, getting into learning guitar and stuff, and I said I would do a picture of it. So because you guys are here on live stream, that's one of my didgeridoos right there in the back. It's a PVC one, and this is my Luna Gypsy tattoo. If you look, the fretboard actually has moons on it, the moon phases, and says Luna right there. That thing is dope. Anyway, so I kind of throw that out there. Now, I'm like, what else could I blab about? Because we've talked about spiritual bypass, we've talked about the black magic of primary forces, we've talked about this giant Bible that I got, which, by the way, there's like big tassel book strings. This has 2 of them in there, and I think it's freaking fabulous. And there's only like writing on 1 page or something like that. It's way in the back. I think it has to do with like where you put your family names and that jazz. One of the things for the black magic of primary forces that I was thinking of is I have these tiles that I was originally going to use for the gate walking. Making an altar out of these tiles, and I mean, this box is gigantic and heavy. I'm probably going to make that primary forces symbol on one of those tiles, because I've literally had that sitting there for, God, 7 years or so. And my cats keep making an absolute mess of the box. But I think I'm finally gonna get around to using them for the black magic of primary forces. So, you guys got any questions for me while I'm just kind of like brainstorming and blying a little bit? Because I've been ranting quite a bit about all of these different things. So, now would be the time for any burning questions if you guys are wondering about different things, or like what kinds of things you might be going, like what kinds of things are happening with you. Where are you in your magical practice? What kinds of things are you doing? What kind of questions might you have about what you want to do next, or anything that you might have even made a YouTube comment on? Some people, they can't type. I had one person comment asking about my handy sigil magic book, and their entire statement made zero sense. So I didn't respond to it because I didn't want to sound condescending with like, write that in English for me. I wasn't going to be that much of a jerk about it, you know? So, hmm. Now, well, it's my live stream, so I'm just going to go with it. One of the things that I can tell you with the Qero tradition, is oh yeah, this is an interesting one, the chumpy stones. So I had somebody on Reddit, or I saw a post on Reddit that they said, you know, have you guys ever done anything with magic that has like blown your mind, or something that has been like truthful, or it's something that you can like point at and say, hey, this worked. And one of the things that I can think of is the chumpy stones that I've used. So the chumpy stones, it's an initiated lineage practice that is held by the by some of the Qero families in they're primarily in like Peru and those other bordering countries. And if you don't know about them, basically they were the priestly class for the Incas. And when the Spanish came over, and the whole conquistadors and that whole genocide, basically they fled into the mountains, and they were able to maintain their culture, and they maintain their language. The language that they speak is actually still spoken, and it's quite what's the word, prevalent in Peruvian society. And I mean, there's even rap artists that rap in their native language, which is called Quechua. And sorry, I got the cat. You're on the live stream. Now, the basically the chumpy stones are 7 stones of alabaster. Some traditions have 5. The tradition that I was initiated into has 7, and they are representative each of a different spirit. Most of them are animals. So you have the snake, the puma, the hummingbird, the condor, the moon, the quetzal, which is a very gorgeous looking bird, and the sun. And each of those actually correspond to a particular what we would call, or what a lot of people in the western slash metaphysical jazz would call chakras, but they call them nowis. And these are energetic eyes. And their points of the points of the nowis slightly differ from points that would be the chakras. You do have, well, when you place the chumpy stones on somebody, you have it on the back of the head, you have it on the third eye, the throat, and then several more going down. And anyway, back to the Reddit post thing, when they were talking about, have you ever done a magical thing where you're like, wow, this worked, like the results are crazy. So I had through my Magic for Hire, I was given the task of doing healing on someone, and they didn't even describe what it was. I don't think they did. And what I did was I employed the chumpy healing. I printed out a basically a bubble-ish outline of a person, and I wrote that person's name on it, and then I wrote a bunch of intentions about healing different things, and I laid the chumpy stones over the outline, and I called on this person's spirit, and I did the entire chumpy healing script, where it's constant petition and prayers for a good while. You invoke them, and you're nonstop with your talking, because the main way that you communicate with spirits is through your speech. So, I mean, this has a lot of applications for invocations and things like that. When you're working with a spirit and you're having them do something, especially in the moment, you don't want to quit the talking, because that is the main connection that you have with that spirit. And the more that you do that, the more that you are urging them to do your task and stay focused on that task. And I did that with this particular person with the chumpy healing, and he said it cured his eczema. And I mean, there's an Etsy review on my shop that literally says that. So I'm not speaking out of, dark places here. that's something that is legit and it happened. And I'm just like, I'm blown away at the fact that that particular thing worked that well, especially by distance. But the Qero tradition is like specialized in terms of doing magic, prayers, healing, yada yada by distance, because their whole civilization and the way that they exist is in all of these different villages that are really really high up in the mountains, and they're separated by long distances. So all of like, you might get a messenger from, to one of their pacos. That's another word for priest, where they say, oh, so and so in my village that's like 50 miles away is sick, can you do something for them? And they utilize their different healing techniques and stuff, and they utilize the rainbow as the way that they can, their energies can travel from where they are to wherever the client or the patient or what have you is. So as far as doing magic for hire and stuff, I feel like doing the whole Qero tradition has actually up leveled that, and it's up leveled all of my magic, which with affirming the idea that time and space doesn't necessarily matter. And of course, you can back that up with like quantum physics and things like that, with quantum entanglement and whatnot, because we were all part of a, if you follow Big Bang Theory and all that stuff, we were at one point all together, all of our atoms in a singularity. So we were all interconnected and stuff. And that interconnectedness does not stop, even though the universe expanded and, however many trillion whatever years ago, and here we are. So I'm connected to the wall behind me. I'm connected to the tapestry. I'm connected to a car that is sitting in a parking lot 57 miles from here, stuff like that. So I'm connected to somebody, to like, I don't know, my mom that lives several states away, right? So can I do spells for people that are around me in my immediate vicinity or on the other side of the planet or planet, depending on what you believe? Yes, I can, because it's all interconnected. Went off on a good tangent there, if I do say so myself. Let's see, half the Bible will easily useful in your current practice with the amount of hymns, psalms, and prayers present, whereas the rest may take some time to work through. If you know about how to effectively work with the Bible, I would definitely love to hear from you. So T-Man, reach out to me. I would love to it. Somebody caught that word. Okay, so you want to go into Conspiracyville? Are birds real? It's my favorite conspiracy ever. Anyways, a planet is like what we know the planet to be, where, it's a sphere. Flat earthers say that, the whole, where it's just a flat plane, that the word that they use for that is planate. 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 So, yeah. Are we, because it's a single plane, right? Hashtag ice wall. Hashtag Operation High Jump. Hashtag NASA stands for never a straight answer. I have been down this rabbit hole before. It's really funny to talk with people about it. You make them think that you're unhinged a little bit, like the Joker level. I'm talking about Heath Ledger's Joker, by the way. Nobody compares. But yeah, so I mean, you could even, so if we're talking dimensions and stuff, whether this universe is what they tell us it is, or whether it is something completely different, then I would argue, and even physicists argue, that there are way more dimensions than this one. And I actually had an interesting thought right before I went into work earlier, which was the idea that, okay, if you follow like Zecharia Sitchin's stuff, or let's say that the gods were, there's even like some old paintings and things like that, and you look at the Bhagavad Gita where there were like great space battles in the sky, and there was even like tons of pictures and paintings and stuff done of this where it looked like a bunch of UFOs were blowing each other up in the sky, right? Let's say that that happened and these gods were on this plane and they knew how to do a bunch of different things that we would consider supernatural or magic or whatever. Maybe they did, right? So in that case, let's say they ended up dying off or they blew each other up or what have you. What if they just moved to a different dimension? What if they are not dead? You know, the gods aren't dead, right? What if they ascended to a different plane of existence, one that is not tied by this physical reality, and therefore it doesn't have the same limits this one does? And that's why arguably we can still contact beings that lived a bajillion years ago. You know, like Jesus could still be around. He's on a different plane. When he ascended, maybe he ascended to a different plane. Same thing with other prophets. I know because Mary, Jesus, and Noah were the only one, or I think it was Noah, or was it? Oh God, Enoch. That's it. Were the only ones that were taken up physically to heaven. Maybe they were actually taken up physically to that other dimension, right? Now, if all those other different beings and stuff exist on these different dimensions, maybe there's a lower one or a higher one. You know, they say that like there's different beings on different kinds of planes of existence. So maybe there is a demonic plane, maybe there's an angelic plane, maybe there's a godly plane, maybe there's an ascended master plane where you have Buddha, Allah, Padmasambhava, all those guys, right? And then you could even go into the idea that like the reality is so limitless because really, where are the walls at the end of it, despite all these different dimensions? What if, because the universe is literally limitless and there's no end of space to it, because what would be on the other side of that, right? Could that render the idea that anything imagined is true? Like if I was to imagine a certain plane of existence, did I just bring that into existence because there is no limit to the actual limits of the universe? You know what I mean? Okay. Ooh, I got a question. Excellent. Mirror dimension. Mirror dimension. Nice. Dude, I believe that is a magician's reference, but so T-Man, nice. So Funboy asks, after the gate walking, can you clearly see and hear the spirits of that planetary realm during invocations? Arguably, that would depend on whether or not you are like if you're sensitive to those kinds of things, right? So if you know, some people are sensitive to those kinds of things, other people are not. You know, my own gifts for those kinds of things come and go. I really feel like there was something following me earlier today and it was a little crazy. Just saying. But we're gonna see where that goes and whether or not that kind of thing continues. So, oh man, it's a party in the comments. Anyways, so if you are psychically open and psychically gifted and you have paid attention to growing your psychic muscles and doing things like meditating a lot and leaving that empty space in your head, and the more and more and more and more and more that you work invocations and different things like that, the more you're going to be able to like tune your brain's radio station or radio antenna to those kinds of planes so you can actually hear those kinds of things. Like, do I hear things a lot from spirits? No, I don't. My lady does. She's very, very good at that. I just get impressions and I get ideas. I'm much more of a visual person in here. So if I'm working through some things and I'm doing an invocation or whatever, I'll get the feeling when the vibe is high. I'll get the feeling to, you know, that something is good to do. I'll get the feeling that something is bad to do, or I'll get a random vision of something that could give me, you know, it could be a picture, a place, or even an object, and that's symbolically, like if I translate it and I think about what it means and what it does and what it's trying to tell me, then that's the message that I get. So, you know, the whole being able to see and hear things is such a high level of arguably spiritual achievement in that way. I mean, that's like, as far as like Star Wars goes, force ghosting, right? Where that's not something everybody can do. You know what I mean? So spirits have to take a crap ton of energy in order to communicate with you. And you also have to be open to and skilled enough to hear it. So, like, if I have a super expensive radio amount of radio equipment, but you don't know what channel to turn to, you're not going to hear me, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Is the Adar Gate like the Abyss? No. No, 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 no. Ganzir is the Abyss. Adar is after that, right? So Adar is Saturn. So we're talking restriction, rules. We're talking about like limits, rules of the road, different things like that. And it's interesting that that's at the end of the first phase of gate walking because, okay, now that you've ascended to this certain level where you've repaired a bunch of and fixed and glorified and eliminated a bunch of negative things on the inside and the outside of you, now here's your limits. So you don't like grow in your egotism, grow in you know, too like out there in your power, let's say. You know what I mean? So Ganzir is way different from Nanib. Nanib slash Adar. I think one of them is Assyrian and the other one is Sumerian. Or it's those two names are either Assyrian, Sumerian, or Babylonian because the Simon Necronomicon has all three in there, So, any other Necronomicon related questions? Wondering if any of you guys have any other questions. It's so amazing to me that with the Simon Necronomicon, I feel like it's like a second college major to me, given the amount of work and oomph that I put into it. As evidenced by Lama Judine gear, which I'm gonna be adding to probably. The more that I dig into the Spirits of the Nurgak and the Black Magic of Primary Forces and any of the other things that I can get my hands on, because I have a couple of things bookmarked about different tablets and things like that, because apparently they did talk about the Tree of Knowledge and of Good and Evil and the Tree of Life in Sumerian tablets. Have I worked with Choronzon? No. Honestly, I'm not even, if you want to, expand on what that name is, it's familiar, but it's just not hitting me right now, man. Kind of late. Oh, interesting question. Can you see your watcher? How do you experience it? So, like I said, with a lot of my stuff, it's more of an impression. It's more like, for example, if I'm down here in my basement and I'm doing some magical working, or if I'm alone in my house and I'm doing some magical working, and if I'm invoking a particular spirit, it goes from that feeling of being alone and translates into that feeling of I'm in an elevator with somebody. There is a difference in the way that it feels when you are solo versus when there is someone else with you. It's some energetic difference. It's some energetic presence. Now, as far as the watcher, they say that it can appear as like a fierce dog or a warrior or something of that sort. And as far as mine goes, I remember like back when I used to kind of be dependent on these images and when I invoke my watcher, what is going to mean that it's here to me is I'm going to see something. Now, am I going to see it in the same way that I'm seeing this right here? No. You more or less see it with your mind's eye as far as an impression. So it's not going to be as thick as like the pool table that is across from me. But do I know it's there because my psychicism is telling me something is standing right there? Yeah, and it's almost like you can see it in your mind's eye when you blink, and then when you open your eyes again, it's gone. That kind of thing is what happened to me. Okay. this might be a little bit over my head at the moment, but the cracked bowl, which is the Ia Adu Ne, I believe that's the incantation with it. It's the Lost Bowl. That is supposed to, if I remember right, and Keros, please help me on this one because my mind's a little bit rusty. But that is to be done with the Urulu text and Eurelia text. I'm I'm tired at this point in the night, guys. But it's to be done with the Eurelia text, and if you notice, when you're working through the gate walking, it's all talking about the Elder Gods are good, the Ancient Ones are bad. The Elder Gods are good. Hang on one second. You do not pop your claws on that guitar case. You get your tuchus off of that. Sorry, being a cat parent. Anyways, so the throughout the whole gate walking, the Elder Gods are good, the Ancient Ones are bad. Then when you move over to the Eurelia text, it tells you that, oh, hey, you can actually work with the Ancient Ones. So since you're kind of switching sides-ish, right, then you start to realize that throughout the entire book, it's telling you about how working with the Ancient Ones is actually kind of the goal. And it's kind of what you're supposed to do, and you're not really supposed to fear them. That's why in the book it says that those that worship the Ancient Ones do so really on really, really high areas, like mountaintops and stuff. And then it tells you to go and do that in another page. So it drops these hints and all these tips, tricks, and traps, as I like to say, about exactly how to figure it out. So the bowl, the Lost Bowl, arguably, I mean, I think it says get a new bowl, but at the same time, if you take your Watcher Bowl and you crack it, then I believe that's technically speaking what you're supposed to do, because you're transforming that oath that you made from working one side to the other. I'd have to dig through Lamadou Dean gear to refresh my mind, because I wrote it all down so I wouldn't have to remember, because I'm getting old. So, can the Watcher reverse hexes and attack your enemy, especially if their name is unknown? So, if you look in the Maclu text, the Maclu burnings, they specifically cite working with the Watcher and working with the Bowl of the Watcher, and the incantation says, it doesn't specify a name. It doesn't give you the context for, putting a name in there, right? So it's like, the whole thing with the fire god, even burn the evildoer, burn the sorcerer and the sorceress. Does it exactly name who? No. But Maclu burnings and stuff are for the intended target, and your Watcher is supposed to carry that energy off. Like, Maclu burnings are literally orders to your Watcher to go and mess somebody up because they wronged you. That kind of thing. My most important question: what horrible fate, if any, do you think the Mad Arab suffered at the end of the book, and why? Ooh. Interesting. So, I mean, if you want to go with the whole Abdul al-Hazred kind of jazz with, he was torn apart by some unseen entity in the middle of Damascus, whatever. That's more the H.P. Lovecrafty kind of thing that they're talking about. But I don't really think that kind of happened with the actual author of the Simon Necronomicon, not Simon the editor. It says that he's forgetting how to write things down, and he doesn't recognize any signs or symbols anymore, and the sign of Zadak is floating above his writing table, and he's hoping to be able to finish the book in time. But what if he just forgot? That's one possibility, where his job was to translate all this stuff and bring it to, onto paper so we could share it. But maybe he didn't do it fast enough, because I mean, it says 1,001 moons, and I think I calculated that to be around 81 or something like that. And my grandparents are 85, and man, being 80, I'll quote some guy back at a job I used to have a couple years back. Wait till you're 80. That's when the wheels really start coming off, right? I think that, there's tons of different things in the book, by the way, that are meant to scare you away from working with it. because, up-leveling yourself and growing and different things like that is scary. And a lot of times we don't take the leap and things like that. And how many other people, when they get to a successful point in life, they're like, oh yeah, you can't get where I am. It's too hard for you. That kind of thing. But I don't think he got ripped apart by some bad entities. I really think that it's like his job was done with being able to bring to the table what he brought to the table, and that he just lost that ability at one point. I think that he ended up just kind of, sadly just like wasting away, having his mission being complete. You know what I mean? Maybe he developed like some like Alzheimer's dementia stuff and he just went mad, because that's what they would have called it back in the day, right? His brain and his ability to write and all that stuff was failing him, and that's it. You know what I mean? So I think, yeah. Funny how I've never extrapolated on that idea until now. Not to mention, madness often comes with the territory. Well, I'm not mad yet. I ain't crazy yet. Am I getting there? Yeah. Is it from magic? No. It's from this mundane world that we live in that's probably going to drive me crazy. You know what I mean? So, all right. Sorry I keep moving around and everything, guys. It's just, at this time of night and whatnot, especially after the crazy week that I've had, I'm a little bit antsy, a little bit restless, that kind of stuff. Magical Alzheimer's. That's probably going to be the title of a video eventually, if I can remember it, because maybe I'll forget it, which would be kind of ironic. But so I think, for the future and, as for like right now, I think I'm definitely going to keep these live streams to about an hour. So I'm probably going to only be on for another couple of minutes. If you wanted to, could solely work with the watcher. So yes, if that's what you wanted to do, then, like, for example, the Necronomicon 101 and Necronomicon 102 that I have up on Udemy, they familiarize you with the book and all the different tools that you're going to need and all the different things that you're going to have to do to familiarize yourself with the ritual format and how to work with the 50 Names of Marduk, which I actually do highly suggest if you're going to step into this, because it allows you to feel into those energies. You can do that, and you can invoke the Watcher and stop there. You do not have to do the you don't have to work your way through the gates, although traditionally you should. And I will forever talk about how beneficial the gate walking is. Now, do you have to do it? Not necessarily, but you can do that. Kind of new here, always going to learn more stuff. Cheers, friends. I'll write down questions I have so I'm ready for these types of live streams. Definitely do that, because I would love doing some questions. So like I said, these live streams will always be around this time of night, probably 9 to 10ish, Eastern Standard Time. And I'm probably, I'll probably end up maybe not getting to one next week because of all the holidays and stuff. If I can squeeze it in, sure. If I'm exhausted, probably not. But I definitely want to do more of these. And, even if you wanted to like email me and you could say live stream questions in the subject, then do that, because then I can come here with those kinds of questions. Although it's really nice to do this kind of stuff, like just chatting back and forth. So yeah. So I'm probably going to cut it off for now, guys, but definitely looking forward to the next one. I hope that all the different things that I've talked about, even if you're watching the replay, I really hope that a lot of the different things that I talked about might have helped put some light in some different areas and answered some questions, because I keep saying this every time I have a live stream. I freaking love talking this stuff, and I really feel like I'm in a room with you guys just chatting it up. So definitely looking forward to doing this again. And, stay tuned. Just keep an eye on your phone around 9 o'clock. If I can manage to keep having these on Wednesday nights, I think I'm going to do that. So So, the Udemy course, the Udemy courses, I believe Udemy always runs sales on these different things, so you can always take a look at it. If you go to magick-af.com/classes, just go into my description. You can find the link tree in there. If it's not on this live stream, which I don't know if the description thingy ported over, if you go to my main channel page, you can find it through my link tree. So the Necronomicon 101 and 102, I think they're around $20 a piece. So definitely, I say this every time. I'm looking forward to do this again, but I'm going to cut it off right here, guys. You have any other further questions or any suggestions or any of that stuff, definitely shoot me an email. You can also find that in my link tree and probably down in the description stuff. All right. So have a good night, guys. Good hunting.